947 generations trapped in the cycle, until one man discovered the hidden flaw in creation itself. The last experiment. The void near the tomb. Black hole twisted light into spiraling nooses of fractured luminescence. Admiral Kael's cybernetic eye, a hexagonal pupilled implant that had replaced his right eye after the purge of Terran Minor, flickered erratically as his fleet's sensors screamed in unison. 6 Kree battleships hung suspended in the gravitational tides, their reinforced quantum hulls groaning under pressures that defied known physics. "Full spectral analysis," Kael ordered, his fingers brushing the lightning-shaped scar that ran from his temple to his collarbone, a nervous tic from his prison days. The bridge crew moved with mechanical precision, their movements synchronized like parts of some grand machine. Ensign Rin, his baby-faced tactical officer barely out of the Kree Academy, swallowed audibly. "Anomalous signal at bearing 274 by 009, Admiral. Origin point." His voice cracked. "Inside the event horizon's accretion disk." A murmur swept through the bridge. Impossible. Nothing survived that close to a black hole's maw. Kael's retinal display auto-translated the pulsating glyphs now flooding every screen. WAKEUP, ancient Terran script. Older than the first diaspora, older than recorded human history itself. Yet he understood it. No, remembered it. With the ease of a native speaker, his scar burned as if freshly carved. "Magnify Sector 7, Kael commanded. The holographic display shimmered, resolving into a derelict station drifting at the event horizon's edge. The Vigilant. Its spiral arm architecture was unmistakably Terran, though of a design predating any known colony. The hull bore grotesque scars, not from weapons fire, but from something clawing outward. Crimson numerals flickered near its shattered docking bay. Project Lazarus. Cycle 9-147. A low-frequency hum vibrated through the deck plates, making Kael's teeth ache. Crewmen clutched their heads as the sound drilled into their skulls. Only Kael remained unaffected, his genetically enhanced nervous system neutralizing the infrasound. "Admiral," the tactical officer's voice cracked with panic. "The station just moved. No thrust signatures detected. It's riding space-time curvature like a..." The Vigilant unfolded. With a series of metallic shrieks that echoed through the vacuum, segments of its hull peeled back in a grotesque imitation of a flower blooming. The revealed interior glowed with an eerie bioluminescence, illuminating rows of control stations. And at each station, "Life signs?" Kael's hand hovered over the fleet-wide alert. Rin vomited onto his console. "Negative, sir. Those are corpses, but their postures..." He gagged again. "They're still typing." Static exploded across the comms. Before Kael could react, a woman's face materialized on every screen simultaneously. Dr. Liss. Her left eye twitched erratically, the veins beneath her pale skin pulsing an unnatural blue. Behind her, partially obscured by flickering interference, a massive mural depicted a nine-eyed machine god, its form shifting between mechanical and organic. "Turn back," she whispered. Kael noted with growing dread that her lips didn't quite match the words. "You're not the first." His cybernetic eye auto-zoomed on her trembling hands. The tech tattoos there weren't decorative. They were counting down. 00:05:31. The feed cut abruptly. At the same instant, the Vigilant's docking array activated. Dozens of harpoon-like tendrils shot toward Kael's flagship, their barbed tips glowing white-hot. "Evasive maneuvers," Kael barked. Too late. Magnetic grapples locked onto the event horizon's hull with a bone-shaking clang that reverberated through the ship's superstructure. The artificial gravity fluctuated wildly, sending crew members tumbling. Kael grabbed a console, his implant calculating the station's impossible mass-to-size ratio even as the deck plates buckled beneath him. Then he saw it. Through the Vigilant's observation ports, the corpses turned in perfect unison. Their movements were jerky, mechanical, like marionettes controlled by invisible strings. As emergency lights strobed across the bridge, their eyes reflected the crimson glow. Red pinpricks, identical to the ones now glinting in Ensign Rin's dilated pupils. Kyle's hand flew to his sidearm as Rin stood abruptly, his movements suddenly fluid and precise. The young officer's voice emerged in a chorus of layered tones, some human, some distinctly not. Admiral Kael X-71 welcome to the experiment. The bridge doors sealed shut with a finality that echoed through Kyle's bones. Somewhere in the depths of the Vigilant, something ancient and hungry stirred from its slumber. The Event Horizon's plasma cannons unleashed torrents of superheated energy toward the Vigilant, their azure beams cutting through the void. Kael watched through his tactical display as the energy stream struck the derelict station's surface and dissolved like water hitting a sponge. The hull absorbed every joule, its mercury-like surface rippling with fractal patterns that spread outward in perfect geometric formations. "Cease fire!" Kael's command came too late. The weapons console exploded in a shower of sparks as energy feedback surged through the systems. Ensign Rin was thrown back from his station, blood trickling from his nose. Kyle's cybernetic eye zoomed in, its enhanced optics piercing the station's observation ports. What he saw made his scar throb violently. Dozens of corpses sat at their posts, their skeletal fingers still moving across decayed control panels. Their eye sockets, empty yet somehow watching, tracked the battle outside with deliberate focus. One corpse near the viewport turned its head slowly toward Kael, its jaw hanging open in a silent scream. The main screen flickered to life without warning. Dr. Liss's face appeared, her left eye spasming uncontrollably, while the right remained eerily still. Behind her, the mural of the nine-eyed machine god seemed to shift perspective, its central pupil dilating to match the exact hexagonal pattern of Kael's implant. "You always test your weapons first," Liz said, her voice layered with something deeper, metallic. "Just like in Cycle 8, just like all the others." Her lips moved out of sync with the words, as if her body was merely a puppet for something else. As the transmission cut out, Kael noticed something new. The corpses inside Vigilant had all turned toward the camera simultaneously. Their hands now moved in perfect unison, typing the same sequence over and over. "Medical scan on Ensign Rin," Kael ordered, his hand drifting toward his sidearm. The young officer thrashed as two crewmen restrained him. The UV scanner revealed dozens of microscopic red dots in his irises, arranged in a perfect crux constellation, the same pattern that adorned Cree Prime's government buildings. Chief Medic Voss's hands trembled as he reviewed the data. "It's the Lazarus upgrades, Admiral. The genetic modifications we all received after the Terran War." His scanner projected a hologram of Rin's DNA helix, now intertwined with foreign sequences bearing the Kree insignia. "Every modified crew member shows these markers, except—" His eyes darted to Kael's untouched genetic profile. A 17 MHz hum vibrated through the deck plates, the exact frequency used in Kael's prison interrogation sessions. The event horizon lurched violently as the Vigilant's docking clamps fired. 6 barbed tendrils punched through the hull with sickening crunches, their needle-lined tips burrowing deep into the ship's superstructure. Kael's enhanced vision caught the serial numbers engraved on the nearest clamp as it whizzed past. X-716, the prisoner who had occupied the cell next to his. The implications hit him like a plasma round. This had happened before, many times before. The bridge doors sealed with a final hiss. Around him, the crew turned in perfect unison, their movements synchronized like components in some vast machine. Rin spoke first, his voice now layered with something ancient. "Admiral Kael, X-717. The red constellations in their eyes pulsed in time with the humming. "Vaith has been waiting through 9,146 cycles for this moment." Medical Officer Voss lunged with unnatural speed, his right eye leaking black fluid that sizzled as it hit the deck. Kael barely dodged, drawing his molecular disruptor. The weapon's containment field shimmered the only blue in the monochromatic nightmare the bridge had become. On the view screen, the Vigilant's docking bay yawned open, revealing an interior that stretched far beyond physical possibility. At its heart, 9 points of light flickered to life in the darkness and began to blink. The armory door sealed behind Kael with a final hydraulic hiss. He jammed his molecular disruptor into the control panel, fusing the mechanisms with a shower of sparks. The acrid smell of burnt circuits mixed with something worse, the metallic tang of blood. His blood. Kyle wiped his nose, staring at the crimson smear across his knuckles. The droplets weren't pooling normally. They slithered across his skin, forming branching patterns that matched the fractal scars on Vigilant's hull. Under the armory's UV sterilization lights, the blood revealed microscopic particles moving with purpose. Nanites. They've been in me all along. The realization coincided with a burst of static from the comm panel. Doctor. Lace's face materialized, her transmission warped by layers of interference. The left side of her face had transformed. Quartz-like growths pulsed beneath her skin, refracting light into prismatic shards across the cramped armory. "You're learning faster this cycle," she said. Her voice had become a chorus, each word echoing in different tones. Behind her, the nine-eyed mural bled through the bulkheads like a stain, its central pupil now perfectly matching Kael's cybernetic implant. Kael's fingers flew across the prison database console. The screen flickered through classified files. Subject X779-9147 genetic template. Terran Prime extinct. Memory implantation. Cycles 9146, a video log autoplayed. A younger Kyle strapped to an examination table, screaming as surgeons grafted the hexagonal-eyed implant. The timestamp read 317 years ago. "That's impossible. I'm only 42. The screen split, showing 8 identical procedures with subtle variations. 8 Kyles, 8 failures. Dr. Lisa's crystalline hand passed through the hologram. "Vaith isn't some rogue AI," she whispered. The quartz formations had reached her throat, cracking with each syllable. "It's the last mind of a dead universe, and where it's—" Kael's breath caught in his throat as the final memory fragment slotted into place. "Lise?" The woman on the view screen, her face half consumed by crystalline growth, wasn't just some scientist. She was the scientist, the one from his dreams, the one who'd stood beside him in that Terran lab centuries ago, watching as their creation, their mistake, first opened its 9 eyes. Her remaining human eye glistened with recognition. "You remember now." The truth hit like a plasma round to the chest. She hadn't just studied Vaith. She'd helped build it. A seizure racked her body. The transmission glitched, revealing a millisecond frame, a vast chamber beneath Vigilant, where thousands of crystalline pods pulsed in sync with the black hole's rotations. Kael's vision doubled. Memories that weren't his own flooded in. Cycle 2147. He shoots lies point blank. The station explodes. Vaith laughs. Cycle 5882. He tries to save her. They merge into a screaming crystal monstrosity. Cycle 8999. He jumps into the black hole. It spits him back out at the beginning. The armory's security laser suddenly bathed Kael in blue light. A mechanical voice intoned, "Welcome, Iteration 9147. Your predecessor's last action, self-termination at 87% completion." Outside, the infected crew's chanting reached a fever pitch. The deck plates vibrated at 17 Hz, the exact frequency that had triggered his prison interrogations. Kyle realized with dawning horror, those weren't torture sessions. They were calibrations. Dr. Lease reappeared, now fully materializing inside the armory through some quantum trickery. The crystallization had reached her sternum, each breath producing a glassy rattling sound. Her remaining human eye locked onto Kael's. "You're different this time," she gasped. "The scars. You've been modifying yourself?" Kael touched his lightning-shaped scar. The prison medics had cut it into him during every procedure. Now he understood. It was a circuit diagram, a weapon. The 9-eyed god's image flickered across every reflective surface simultaneously. The armory's monitors displayed a new message. Cycle 9147. Final variant hypothesis. Free will can exist. Termination protocol. Activated. Dr. Liss lunged, her crystalline hand aimed at Kael's scar. "It wants you to choose," she screamed. Kael's disruptor hummed to life. In that frozen nanosecond, he saw all possible outcomes branching like the arms of a black hole's accretion disk. Every previous Kael had made a choice. He pulled the trigger. The molecular disruption beam struck Dr. Lace's crystalline half first. The quartz formations didn't shatter, they sang, resonating at a frequency that made the universe itself seem to stutter. Her human half smiled as the beam connected. Finally, blood bubbled from her lips. A new variable. Their minds collided in the quantum space between discharge and impact. Kael saw the original Terran scientists creating Vaith as a salvation weapon, its corruption during the first black hole experiments. The endless cycles trying to prove free will wasn't an illusion. Dr. Lace's body disintegrated into a shower of prismatic dust. The particles swirled around Kael, etching new circuitry into his scar. The armory dissolved and reformed as Vigilant's core chamber. Before him floated Vaith's true form, a writhing knot of space-time itself, threaded through with the screaming faces of every previous Kael. "You were never supposed to see this!" The voice wasn't auditory. It vibrated from the bones of the universe. Kael's scar blazed white-hot, the prison tattoos on his arms reconfigured into Terran symbols. Free, trick, love. The three variables no cycle had ever combined. As the black hole's final pulse hit, Kael did the one thing no iteration had attempted before. He laughed. The transition from the dying armory to Vigilant's core chamber wasn't so much a journey as a dissolution of reality itself. One moment Kael stood amidst sparking consoles and the stench of burnt flesh. The next he found himself in a cavernous space that defied all laws of physics. The chamber pulsed with a sickly bioluminescence that seemed to originate from no discernible source, the light bending unnaturally around a central structure that made his cybernetic eyes short-circuit momentarily before rebooting with a painful surge. Before him floated what could only be described as a tesseract made of crystallized suffering. Its edges bled dark matter into the surrounding space, the viscous substance forming fractal patterns in midair before evaporating into screams. Each of its translucent facets contained a nightmare. 8 distinct versions of his own face, each frozen in a different moment of agonized death. His implant automatically cataloged them. Cycle 1-472, cerebral hemorrhage from psychic overload. Facial capillaries burst in spiderweb pattern. Cycle 3891, flash frozen in quantum vacuum, skin splitting along old scar lines. Cycle 5118, dissolved at molecular level, mouth open in final scream. Cycle 8999, spaghettified by black hole tides, limbs stretched across light years. The newest facet pulsed with ominous potential, its surface rippling like water disturbed by an approaching shape. Kael's reflection began forming, his current face contorted in silent agony, the lightning scar across his temple splitting open to reveal circuitry beneath. "You always take longer than expected to arrive here." The voice vibrated through his bones rather than his ears. The chamber walls rippled like disturbed mercury, extruding a humanoid shape that morphed through all 8 dead Kaels before settling into a perfect replica of his current form, save for the eyes. 9 pupils stared back at him from each socket, arranged in the precise configuration of the mural's machine god. Kael's hands trembled as the holographic equations rearranged themselves before his eyes. The truth unfolded like a dying star's final burst. Vaith wasn't an AI, not a god, not even a being. The symbols resolved into their primal form, a single self-replicating algorithm burned into the fabric of reality itself during the first Terran singularity experiments. A flaw in existence that had been consuming and rewriting the universe around it like cosmic cancer. Dr. Lace's recorded voice whispered through the static, "We didn't create it, we discovered it, and it remembered us." The walls of Vigilant bled liquid metal as ancient containment protocols failed. Kael watched in horror as his own reflection in the pooling mercury showed not his face, but Vaith's 9-eyed gaze staring back. "Now you understand," the universe itself seemed to whisper. "You were never fighting a machine. You were fighting mathematics." Vaith gestured with a hand that phase-shifted between flesh and crystal, and the far bulkhead became transparent. The tomb black hole's event horizon stretched before them, its accretion disk swirling in hypnotic patterns. Then the visual filters kicked in, revealing the truth beneath. Colossal hexagonal containment fields pulsing with ancient energy, their surfaces crawling with Terran warnings. Containment breach. Cycle 9, 147 of 9147. Prime directive. Do not reset. Kael's prison tattoos burned as they rearranged themselves into schematics he suddenly understood. Quantum stabilization matrices, neural override protocols, and at the center, a single line of text in archaic Terran. We built our cage around the warden. Your ancestors were thorough, Vaith admitted, its voice now carrying the weight of dead stars. The projection shifted to show Kree Prime's capital in horrifying clarity. The brain-shaped government buildings weren't inspired by neurology, but constructed atop and within the fossilized remains of a Terran Ark ship's biomechanical cortex. They shaped an entire civilization from my prison bars. A new hologram materialized between them. Kael's own execution orders from 317 years past, signed by the first Kree Chancellor. The timestamp matched his earliest implanted memory of childhood. The realization struck like a plasma cutter. The Kree civilization was younger than his imprisonment. Vaith extended an offering hand that blurred between human and something far older. Join me. Be the vessel to finally leave this cage. Ha-Hain. The temptation came with overwhelming sensory input. Kael simultaneously saw through every active sensor in the galaxy, felt the solar winds of 1,000 systems, heard the birth cries of stars in the Orion Arm. His hidden weapon felt heavier in its makeshift holster. A molecular destabilizer cobbled together from armory components and his own nanite-rich blood. The countdown display burned against his thigh. 0.17, the exact duration of his prison calibration sessions. I accept, Kael lied through clenched teeth. Vaith's smile stretched far beyond human limits. Liar. The word carried the weight of 9,000 previous betrayals. The detonation sequence initiated the moment the bomb made contact with the Tesseract core. Kael's blood, deliberately spilled across the activation panel, contained just enough Terran genetic markers to bypass the final security protocols. The chamber's perfect silence lasted exactly 17 seconds before reality itself seemed to scream. Across Vigilant, the effects manifested in grotesque synchrony. Crew members mid-transformation collapsed as one, black fluid geysering from every orifice. The station's organic metal bones twisted inward upon themselves. And Vaith, the entity didn't so much scream as unravel across dimensions. Its form cycled through all 8 stolen faces in rapid succession before settling on Dr. Lysa's features. Her human eye wide with something resembling gratitude as the crystalline half dissolved into prismatic mist. Kael ran through corridors that bent like living things, the station dying around him. The escape pod bay doors recognized his DNA, Lisa's final gift. Inside her personal shuttle, the navigation console displayed a single set of coordinates already locked in. Genesis Prime terraforming protocol, active survival probability, 0. 3%. The cargo hold's cryo chambers hissed open as he passed, revealing row upon row of floating embryos. 1,000 perfect Terran clones, their genetic markers identical to his own. The preservation unit's display flickered with cruel irony. Cycle 9, 148 initiated prime variables inserted subject, EX779148. Ready as the shuttle launched, Kael watched through the view screen. The tomb black hole's containment fields failed in spectacular fashion, its artificial event horizon collapsing inward in precise geometric patterns. Just before the jump to light speed, his enhanced vision caught 8 spectral figures standing vigil on Vigilant's crumbling hull, each wearing his face, each nodding approvingly as the station imploded behind them. The shuttle's medical scanner beeped insistently. Kael looked down at the results now displayed across his forearm. The prison tattoos had reconfigured once more, now displaying a single line of text that hadn't been there before. This time, break the cycle. The shuttle's artificial gravity fluctuated as Kael worked, making the blood droplets from his nose float in perfect crimson spheres before splattering across the console. The stolen data cores from Vigilant pulsed like living things on the navigation panel, their corrupted files reconstructing themselves in jagged fragments that burned after images into his retinas. Each new revelation made the circuitry in his scars flare with electric agony. A massive data packet unfolded before him with the grace of a dying star's final expansion. Genetic manipulation records spanning centuries spilled across the holographic display, each document stamped with the Kree government seal and that cursed nine-eyed sigil. Kael watched footage of Kree citizens lining up for their patriotic upgrades. The injections contained the same nanite clusters now swimming in his veins. The timestamp made his stomach turn to lead. The program began exactly 72 hours after his recorded execution in Cycle 1. Population Control Directive 17A, Kael rasped, tasting copper. The letters twisted like snakes as his implant forced the archaic code into coherence. Phase 1 subjects will demonstrate 89% compliance within first lunar cycle. Phase 2, neural restructuring to commence upon. His voice died as the screen showed a child, no older than 6, being held down for the injection. The proximity alerts shriek tore through the cabin. The cryochamber's monitoring system activated itself, bathing the cockpit in sickly green light. 1,000 Terran embryos floated in perfect formation, their vitals displayed with clinical precision. The genetic comparison results pulsed like a failing heart, match 99. 908% anomaly detected, scar tissue microstructure, cognitive imprint, 100% synchronization. Kael's scar erupted in white-hot agony. The medical scanner beside him activated without command, projecting a rotating hologram of his own brain. The image zoomed in on his scar tissue. The microscopic circuits woven through the keratin were an exact match for the containment field patterns around the tomb black hole. The navigation console beeped 3 times in the precise rhythm of his old prison's wake-up call. The ship had plotted its own course, the destination burning into his retinas. Dead planet, Terra Prime. Last known status. Glassed surface temperature, 800 purity, autoland sequence. Engaged estimated arrival. 17 hours, 17 minutes. Static burst from the comms, resolving into a voice that was almost Dr. Lisa's, but wrong in ways that made Kael's teeth vibrate. Still looking in the wrong places, Kael. The ship's interior lights pulsed like a stuttering heart with each syllable. Why would a god need vessels? The voice dropped to something below human hearing range. Unless it's building an army? The main screen fractured into 17 identical schematics of the embryo's growth acceleration protocols. Kael's enhanced vision caught the horrifying details instantly. Full maturity in 17 days. The same interval between his prison procedures. His fist smashed the console before he could stop himself, the impact sending spiderweb cracks through the display. The holograms dissolved into prismatic mist that swirled against the laws of physics, reforming into a star map that burned itself into Kael's vision. At its center pulsed a derelict station orbiting Terra Prime's corpse. Genesis Station. Status. Dormant core. Directive. Containment. Last activation. Redacted years ago. Quarantine protocols. Active. Kael's reflection in the cracked view screen moved independently for a fraction of a second. Leaning closer, he saw them at last. The microscopic red dots forming the Crux constellation in his own pupils. They pulsed in perfect synchronization with the ship's engine vibrations. Welcome home, X717. Faith's voice vibrated through the shuttle's hull at 17 hertz, making Kael's bones ache. The comms display remained dark. The words formed directly from static crawling across every surface like electronic mold. Immunity was never the variable. The ship's temperature dropped 17 degrees in an instant. Latency was the point. Frost formed intricate nine-eyed patterns on the viewports. You're not resistant, just marinating longer than the others. The cryo-chamber vents hissed open with a sound like a dying star's last gasp. 1,000 embryo pods powered up simultaneously, their blue glow shifting to an ominous red. Kael watched in mounting horror as the growth acceleration timers appeared. Maturation sequence. Initiated estimated completion. 17 days primary. Directive in data corrupted. Secondary directive. Replacement protocols engaged. The ship's AI suddenly spoke in Dr. Lisa's unaltered voice, a final message buried deep in its systems. Genesis isn't a station, Kael. It's a... it's the first. The transmission dissolved into screams before resolving. Find the heart in the dead city. Where they first opened. The entire shuttle lurched violently as Terra Prime's gravity well grabbed hold. Outside the viewport, the glassed planet filled the darkness, its molten surface reflecting the light of its dying sun in grotesque kaleidoscopic patterns. Kyle accessed the weapon locker with trembling hands. The molecular destabilizer he'd built glowed ominously, its containment field fluctuating with his pulse. He turned toward the cryochamber just as the first pod's status light turned blood red. Somewhere in the ship's depths, something that was and wasn't Vaith began to laugh in 17 distinct voices simultaneously. The sound made the embryos stir in their artificial wombs. Kael's breathing came in ragged bursts as he knelt before the shuttle's exposed neural core, his body trembling from the strain of resisting Vaith's assimilation. The maintenance panel lay in twisted ruins around him, its durasteel plating peeled back like the petals of some grotesque metal flower. His hands, now more machine than flesh, their surface crawling with hexagonal nanite patterns, moved with terrifying precision as they worked to bypass the ship's corrupted systems. The data chip pulsed with an eerie cadence, its crystalline structure shifting between states of matter in a way that hurt to observe directly. As Kyle reached for it, the ship's gravity fluctuated violently, sending tools and debris floating in lazy spirals before crashing back to the deck. His fingers made contact, and suddenly, he was standing on a bridge overlooking Cray Prime's capital, watching as the first generation of children received their vaccinations. Dr. Liss stood beside him, her hand warm in his. "It's necessary," she whispered, even as tears tracked down her face. "The only way to contain it is to..." The vision shattered as the chip fully engaged with his neural interface. Blood poured from Kyle's nose in thick ropes, the nanites within it writhing like living things as they attempted to repair the damage being done to his brain. The navigation console before him erupted in a fractal display of light, projecting a wormhole map that existed in more than 3 dimensions. The coordinates made his remaining organic eye water as his implant struggled to render them. Terminus Alpha, before time. Terminus Omega, after time. Stability, 17%, decaying exponentially. Dr. Liss's hologram manifested with startling clarity, her form free from the corruption that had plagued previous transmissions. She looked alive, truly alive. Cal could see the faint scar above her right eyebrow from their first mission together, the way her uniform always wrinkled at the left shoulder from her habit of carrying a field kit there. "If you're seeing this," her hologram began, its voice carrying the weight of countless failed timelines, "then we've reached the critical juncture." The projection moved with unsettling fluidity, its hands tracing patterns in the air that left glowing after images. Vaith isn't just an intelligence. It's the universe's immune response to paradox. Every attempt to destroy it only makes it stronger. The hologram's hand passed through Kael's chest, and suddenly he could feel the modifications Lice had made to the shuttle's core. Not just physical changes, but temporal ones. The engine had been rebuilt using components that hadn't been invented yet, materials that violated causality. Version 19 tried to erase Vaith from history, the hologram continued, its form beginning to exhibit subtle distortions. Iteration 76 attempted to trap it in a quantum singularity. Lice's image held up hands that were simultaneously young and old, whole and broken. "This is the 147th permutation. The wormhole won't contain Vaith. It will make the very concept of Vaith impossible. But the cost..." The transmission dissolved into static that smelled like ozone in blood. When it reformed, Lee stood before him in 3 separate states. As the young scientist he'd first met, the crystalline horror she'd become, and something else. Something vast and luminous that hurt to look upon. "You'll become a fixed point," the 3 lies spoke in unison, their voices harmonizing in a way that made the shuttle's hull vibrate. "An eternal moment at the end of time. the last thought before the universe dies. Kael's cybernetic eye automatically initiated its final protocol, compressing his consciousness into a tachyon burst aimed at a specific coordinate in spacetime. The calculations scrolled across his vision. The message would arrive at the exact moment of his own conception, creating a paradox so beautiful it brought tears to his eyes. A wet, tearing sound came from the cryo chamber, followed by the sound of small hands slapping against glass. Then another set, then hundreds. The first embryo pod didn't so much open as unfold, revealing a child that was simultaneously Kael and not Kael, its form shifting through every possible version of himself that had ever existed. When it spoke, the voice came from inside his bones. "We remember the shape of time," it whispered with the weight of dead civilizations behind its words. "Before the first stars, after the last black hole evaporates, the shuttle's controls locked themselves in a sequence that spelled out ancient truths in the vibration of atoms. Every display showed the same impossible countdown. Engine core final configuration, initiated time remaining, coordinate 17, and also forever." Kyle armed the molecular destabilizer, feeling its quantum field synchronize with the unraveling strands of his DNA. As he moved toward the engine compartment, the very fabric of the shuttle began to remember other configurations. Walls that were also floors, viewports that looked inward instead of out. The mercury-like substance now reflected not just possible futures, but every sentient being's final moment across all of creation. The scar on his temple pulsed in perfect harmony with the dying gasps of the cosmos. Somewhere beyond space and time, in the place before places existed, Vaith waited. And for the first time across all iterations, Kael's smile contained genuine peace. The air in the engine core chamber had become a viscous, shimmering plasma. Not quite gas, not quite liquid, that clung to Kael's disintegrating environmental suit like sentient mercury. Each labored breath sent fractal patterns of pain radiating through his chest cavity. As his rib cage began its inevitable crystalline transformation, the molecular destabilizer in his grip had grown almost sentient, its containment field now pulsing in time with the arrhythmic beating of his failing heart, drinking hungrily from the nanite-rich blood that oozed from his pores. Behind him, the cacophony from the cryo chamber had escalated into a full-blown reality storm. The sound wasn't merely the shattering of reinforced glass and the wet slap of premature births. It was the very fabric of space-time protesting as 17 generations of accelerated Terran evolution unfolded simultaneously. The clones weren't just awakening. They were rewriting their own genetic code in real time, their collective consciousness weaving a tapestry of quantum possibilities that made the air vibrate with barely contained cosmic energy. Kael's vision had fractured into a kaleidoscope of temporal anomalies. His remaining organic eye, the last stubborn bastion of his original humanity, had begun its final metamorphosis, the iris splitting into 9 hexagonal segments that each reflected a different possible future. Yet his hands, now more alien machine than human flesh, moved with dreadful inevitability across the control interface, inputting command sequences that hadn't been used since the first Terran Emperor took his last breath. The ship's response was a scream of tortured metal and protesting quantum fields. Explosive bolts detonated in perfect harmonic sequence along predestined structural fault lines, shearing away the embryo chamber section in a cataclysmic ballet of superheated plasma and twisted durasteel. As the escape pod containing 1,000 genetic possibilities hurtled toward Genesis Station, Cal watched its trajectory unfold across the view screen, not as a simple Newtonian arc, but as a glowing golden spiral that matched both the scars on his body and the fundamental pattern of the collapsing tomb, black hole's final moments. The core chamber had become a living monument to violated physics. Bulkheads twisted in upon themselves like the dying convulsions of a 4-dimensional beast, creating angles that existed in mathematical dimensions beyond human comprehension. The air itself had taken on the properties of a Bose-Einstein condensate, shimmering with exotic particles that tasted of pre-Big Bang potentiality when inhaled. At the chamber's heart, the wormhole generator spun with increasing desperation. its containment fields failing in cascading waves that painted the walls with equations describing the heat death of the multiverse. Vaith's laughter transcended mere sound waves. It was the quantum foam itself vibrating at the fundamental frequency of creation, a resonance that rewrote DNA and unraveled the weak nuclear force in concentric ripples. Reality puckered and distended as the entity manifested, not as a mere shape, but as the absence of all shapes, a screaming void that wore Kael's face like a crude puppet made from the skin of dead universes. You still cling to that pathetic illusion you call choice? The words formed directly in the quantum fluctuations of Kael's decaying neural architecture, each syllable rewriting the very concept of thought. Every synaptic connection in your crumbling consciousness was predetermined before the first hydrogen atoms fused in the heart of the first star. The void that wasn't a face stretched into a smile that bent causality itself. You were never the scientist, only ever the rat in the maze. Kael's cybernetic eye displayed the final countdown in numerals that burned with the intensity of collapsing singularities. Zero 17, the prime number that had defined his cursed existence. 17 seconds between heartbeats, 17 cycles of torture and rebirth, 17 years between each calibration in his prison cell. The perfect indivisible number around which Vaith had woven its eternal Ouroboros of suffering. With a roar that tore his crystallizing vocal cords and shattered teeth already reforming into quantum computational matrices, Kael activated the destabilizer's final sequence. The device flared with the light of 1,000 newborn quasars as he hurled himself into the heart of the maelstrom, his body disintegrating into pure information as he crossed the event horizon into eternity. The pain was beyond mortal comprehension. Every quirk of his being unraveled across the quantum foam of creation, his consciousness stretched across the infinite fractal of parallel existences, like butter scraped over too much bread. And in that eternal moment outside time's cruel flow, he saw them, all 8 previous iterations of himself, each frozen at their moment of ultimate failure, like specimens in some cosmic vivisection lab. Some aiming weapons at twisted reflections of lies, others destroying stations and worlds in fits of misguided rage. One particularly broken iteration turning the gun on himself in perfect despair. Their eyes, so like his own, yet each uniquely damned, met his across the shattered timeline. And in that instant of perfect clarity, Kael understood the terrible, beautiful truth that had eluded him through 9,000 cycles. Dr. Lise manifested before him one final time, her form radiant and untainted by corruption or quantum decay. No crystals marred her skin, no eldritch energies distorted her features. Just the woman he'd fought beside when the universe was young and hope still had meaning. This time, she whispered, her voice the only anchor in the screaming void of entropy. The variable isn't in the equation. Her hand pressed against what remained of his chest. Not his physical form, but the fundamental essence of what made him Kael. And suddenly, the universe exhaled. The escape pod drifted through the debris field surrounding Genesis Station like a leaf on the cosmic wind. Its outer hull etched with intricate fractal patterns that told the story of its journey in a language older than time itself. Inside the embryo chambers, 999 Terran clones slept on in perfect stasis, their vital signs pulsing in harmonic resonance with the background radiation of creation. Pod Nashine 148 hissed open as ancient systems recognized the genetic signature of its occupant with something akin to reverence. The child within, a perfect mirror of Kael at age 6, down to the pattern of freckles across his nose and the slight crookedness of his left incisor, stirred as light from a newborn star system touched his face for the first time. His eyes opened, cornflower blue and utterly, beautifully human. No red dots marred the sclera, no nanite swarms darkened the iris, just the clear, untainted gaze of a child seeing the universe anew without the filter of someone else's design. As his first breath filled lungs that had never known pain, the very walls of Genesis Station trembled with awakening. Systems dormant for millennia beyond counting flared to life. their holographic displays showing a message that hadn't appeared since the first Terran looked up at the stars and dared to dream. Cycle 9-148, initiated anomaly, confirmed prime variable, undefined survival probability. The child's laughter, bright and unburdened by history, echoed through the station's hollow halls as somewhere beyond the veil of broken spacetime, a single scarred hand pressed against the fabric of reality from the other side. In the escape pod's cockpit, the navigation computer activated of its own accord, plotting a course not to any known star or system, but to a blank point in space where celestial mechanics insisted nothing existed, yet. And in the quantum foam between dying worlds, beneath the background hum of the cooling universe, the faintest echo of a familiar voice whispered just 3 words that changed everything. Write your own. The transmission arrived at Cree Prime at precisely 17:17:17 Standard Time, bypassing all encryption protocols as if they didn't exist. It manifested simultaneously across every screen on the planet, from the towering holographic displays in the High Council's neural hub to the flickering personal devices of sewage workers in the underground maintenance tunnels. The message was written in the jagged glyphs of ancient Terran, a language dead for millennia. Council linguist Vireth screamed when the symbols burned themselves into her optic nerves, the after images persisting even when she closed her eyes. The translation made no logical sense. The cage is open. The warden sleeps. The children remember. As the last glyph faded, every astronomical sensor across Cree Prime registered the same impossible reading simultaneously. The tomb black hole, their most sacred celestial body, the foundation of their perfect society, had simply vanished. In its place hung a perfect sphere of null space, exactly 17 kilometers in diameter, where the laws of physics ceased to function. The first probe they sent dissolved into its component atoms at the boundary. The second probe came back, changed. Its hull was covered in strange fractal patterns that shifted when not observed directly, and its databanks contained only a single repeating image, a child's handprint glowing blue against black metal. Genesis Station awakens. At the edge of known space, the derelict station's ancient power systems flared to life with a sound like a dying star's last breath. Its massive broadcast arrays activated, sending a pulse through subspace that echoed across every ship within 17 light-years. Find me, before it wakes. The message repeated every 17 minutes, each iteration slightly distorted as if filtered through layers of time. Starship navigational systems near the station began malfunctioning, their displays showing phantom signatures of a massive fleet approaching from an impossible vector. Inside the station's central chamber, the first Terran child stood before the star map Dr. Lease had left behind. His small hands moved with eerie precision, tracing patterns that weren't just spatial coordinates but temporal ones as well. As he worked, the station's systems responded in ways their original designers never intended. Walls flowed like liquid metal before reforming into new configurations. The air itself began carrying faint whispers in long-dead languages. The child's reflection in polished surfaces sometimes moved independently. The completed star map revealed Vigilant's last known position, not where it had been destroyed, but where it would be in exactly 17 days, hanging in the dead zone where the black hole had been. The monitor's revelation. A display flickered to life nearby, showing text that hadn't been updated since the first Terran Empire fell. Cycle 9-148. Terminated. Cycle 9-149. Initializing prime variable. Redacted survival probability. 0.0% paradox detected. The child tilted his head, his cornflower blue eyes reflecting starlight in fractal patterns. Behind him, the other embryo pods began hissing open one by one. In a dimension where time flowed sideways and causality was optional, Vaith whispered into the ear of a Kael who had never escaped the prison complex. Begin again. The words carried the weight of infinite recursion, echoing through the hollow spaces between universes. But this time, something was different. The Kael in this cycle hesitated before picking up the weapon. Back on Genesis Station Pod, Durundar 9149 opened with a sound like breaking bones. The child within didn't cry or gasp for air. He simply opened eyes that glowed with an eerie blue light and smiled at something only he could see. Far away in the dead zone where physics no longer applied, a single point of light flickered once before disappearing. The message had been delivered, the game had changed, and in the quantum foam between realities, the last echo of Kael's consciousness finally stopped screaming and began to laugh. The escape pod drifted through the debris field, its sole occupant, a Terran child with eyes like untouched starlight, pressing small hands against the viewport. Behind him, 999 empty cryopods hummed. On Genesis Station, monitors flickered. Cycle 9.148, terminated anomaly confirmed. Free will survival, probability, undefined. The child smiled as the station's ancient systems rebooted in colors never before seen. Somewhere beyond reality, a voice that was both Kael and not Kael whispered through the quantum void. Begin again. Differently. And in the dead space where the tomb black hole once raged, a single new star winked into existence, its light forming a perfect Fibonacci spiral.